I think he's turning us on, Mike.
Oh, thank you.
We're on, Mike.
We good?
Yeah, he's got us on.
We set to go? Ladies and gentlemen, can I have your attention? Thank you. I call the Hamilton, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the Hamilton people, my apologies.
Right, I'll do you if you do me.
Yeah, they can call each other, so. This is the Wenham Finance Advisory Committee, call to order.
And I'm calling the Hamilton Finance and Advisory Committee to order. We have Darcy Dale present, Nick Tenson present, and I'm Phil Stearns. Joe Demilowitz. I was close, but not.
Good enough.
Is here, and also Marissa.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Appreciate it. I think we got a few joint department presentations being given today. So I guess the first one up, is it joint rec, or who wants to volunteer?
Yeah, me, I want to get out of here quickly.
Static.
And this one is?
Joint Recreation.
Okay.
So as always, Sean Timmons, Joint Recreation Director, and as always, I appreciate being first on the agenda. So I know Marissa did, or is in the process of giving handouts, so I just want to make sure everyone's kind of on the same page, that we're all looking at the same documents as we go. So the one that I'm going to start with is just this one. It says Recreation Department at the top left. It includes a number of items, so if everyone's there, we can get going. So this spreadsheet is the general fund from the Recreation Department. As you know, it's a joint department, so these costs are split between the two towns. And really kind of overall, nothing, drastically has changed from last fiscal year to this fiscal year. I'd be certainly willing to answer any questions anybody has. But really just want to highlight a couple of items, because it's a couple of new programs or new items that we have, or things that we're looking to do to the rec center. So if under expenditures, you'll see that there's $3,000 under the line item for repair and maintenance buildings and grounds. That $3,000 is a partial cost to replace the ceiling fans. We have 4 ceiling fans in the recreation in the gym. So we want to replace those ceiling fans. The ones that we currently have are either not working or not working properly. So as you can tell, we put the $3,000 in the budget for that. And it is a reduction in previous year, fiscal year 19, for those of you that were here last year. That money was dedicated to refurbishing the gym floor, which we had done in September. So really, we're reducing the amount by $3,000, but it has nothing to do with the gym floor itself. That one particular line item is to replace the 4 ceiling fans at the rec center. You'll also notice, really just 2 lines down, a slight increase in the custodial service line item. So we've gone from $6,800 to $8,000. That extra $1,200, and again, it's a shared cost with the revolving fund, is for custodial maintenance of the gym floor. So as we refurbish the gym floor, we have a company that's coming in 2 times a week, Tuesdays and Fridays, to do a full cleaning of the gym floor. So the $6,800 that was pretty consistent from years before is just our normal custodial service, which includes our offices, our bathrooms, and all the other rooms as part of the building. That extra $1,200 is dedicated solely to the gym floor cleaning.
What do they do?
So we basically do a wet clean. So they have it's a special chemical or a solution that we mop and clean the floor. And so especially in the winter, what you see is, or what you will get, especially when it snows, is a lot of the children or a lot of the participants that are using the rec center will come in off the street with salt or other items kind of picked up on their shoes. We don't have, I don't know if how many folks are familiar with the gym, but as soon as you step into the gym, you step onto the court. So we don't really have an entranceway where folks then can kind of go off to the side, so they're not kind of interfering on the gym floor. Once you step in, I mean, you're basically at the baseline.
Is that the same thing that Oz does every Sunday?
So Steve cleans every Sunday, but it's a little bit different.
Okay.
a little bit different. Yep.
So this will be an amount that will carry forward in the out years too?
So this amount, yeah, so this one, we'd like to continue this amount as we go forward. So for the custodial services, we'd be looking at, about $8,000 moving forward. And again, that's a cost that's shared with the revolving fund. Actually, really, both of those costs are. So this isn't solely, or the service isn't solely being paid for by the general fund. We are supplementing some of that with the revolving fund money, as we did with the gym floor as well, the refurbish of the gym floor.
Do you know how much a percentage?
Of the,
Revolving fund?
for the gym floor
Yeah,
cleaning, it's about 50-50.
50/50?
Yeah. Depending upon how often, depending upon how often we clean it and how often the snow sticks around, pretty much.
Okay.
And then the other costs, like I said, are pretty straightforward. And again, these are just the general fund costs that we have, expenses that we have between the two towns. So as you can see, in total, for personnel, we've gone up 4%, which basically takes into account our step increases in our COLAs. It's myself and a full-time administrative assistant, so we have 2 full-time employees. And our expenditures are actually going down just about 5% this year. So in total, for our department, it's an increase of a little under $5,000 or 2.7%. So I don't know if anyone has any other questions on any of the other line items. Hopefully they're pretty straightforward.
Last year, you increased the hours, right, of the system?
So last year was the major increase in hours. We went from a part-time 20-hour administrative assistant to a full-time administrative assistant. And as when we look at the recreation revolving fund, I think you'll see some, significant improvements and significant increases on our revenue and our programming. That's tied directly to having a full-time administrative assistant in there. So, in my mind, money well spent.
Anyone on the Hamilton side? All right.
Are you going to talk about the revolving?
I am,
fund
yep.
later?
Okay.
So, and maybe Marissa might be better to talk about the next paper is essentially just our health insurance cost. Not really my specialty, but I don't know if anyone has questions on those.
Was that the
I'm
next
sorry,
page?
Sean, I do have a question on the front.
Yeah, sure thing.
You've got the operating cost is 190, and then in addition to that, there's workers' comp and retirement. Is that correct?
Correct.
So, okay. So we're looking at about 225, that range, right?
235?
Just under 225. Yep, just under. Looking down here.
You're looking down here, yeah.
That's the operating, and those are the additional costs.
Mm-hmm.
I was just trying to get a sense of that. That's all.
Yeah, and I think maybe we're one of the few departments, the library, the joint departments, where it's broken out. I think in most cases it's just one, maybe lump sum for the town. So maybe that's why it looks a little different here for this department.
And this was a result of rate increases?
I would assume the health insurance.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're projecting a 6% increase on our health insurance. We haven't got our final estimate yet, but, we started with 10%, and we were told that we could decrease it to a 6% increase. We're waiting on our final numbers, but as of right now, it includes an estimate of 6%. And if for some reason we actually end up with a lower rate, which I hope so, when we do the first quarter billing, we adjust it. So right now, it's based on estimates, but when we actually do our billing, we base it on actuals. So you could see a little bit of an increase or a decrease depending on how it goes when you get your first bill.
Okay.
Of
Thank
the 31,000 total cost for active and retirees, what percent, is that the full percent that is paid by the town?
Yes.
And us
Yes,
together?
that's right.
And the
So it's
employee
75%.
kicks in X? What is
This
X?
is 75%.
75,
So
this
we have a
represents 75%.
75-25 split.
75, 25, okay, thank you. And that's consistent all the way around?
Yeah.
That's was everything,
Thanks, man.
So the second page is just, I guess, what Mercer was speaking about was the insurance costs, just broken out, as well. Well, yes, the insurance costs and retirees broken out. The third page is the assessed valuation, and this is how the, the quote-unquote split between the two towns is determined. So that's why you see the, call it 66-34, give or take, split between the two towns. The next page is the Recreation Revolving Fund spreadsheet. So this is a pretty broad overview. And again, I think, we have this conversation, I think, every year, but, when you look at our fiscal year 19 to date, and that's of February 6th was my last reconcile. We are $66,000 in the hole on the revolving fund. And again, that's a majority to do with our camp program. So the majority of our expenses in our summer camp for fiscal year 19 have already incurred, and we're going to be getting our revenue starting in March. So really, I think the good one to look back to is to look back at our fiscal year 18 actuals. It's always nice to kind of look back to the actuals. And as you can see, the revolving fund as a whole was a net gain of a little over $7,000. And I think, again, with the revolving funds, the idea is to not try to create as much surplus as you possibly can, but it is to make sure that you're paying for the services that you provide. And, clearly, we're demonstrating that we're doing that. I think one nice thing to look at when you look at the actuals, if you go back to fiscal year 16, on the top half where it says Patent Park Program, that was the last, fiscal year 16 was the last summer that we had without the swimming pool. And we had $52,000 in revenue from our camp program. Fiscal year 18 is the first fiscal year that we were able to track revenue for the camp program with a full year of the swimming pool. As you can see, we went up to $123,000 in revenue, and it's really without much of a price increase on the program itself. In fact, I think we only went up $3 per session. So you can see the camp has the pool has had a really large impact on our camp program. This past year, our camp program numbers were the strongest that they've been since I've been here, and that goes back, almost 10 years, believe it or not, at this point. And again, I think the trends that we're seeing with the revenue from our programming, again, I mentioned, having the administrative assistant move full-time. If you look at our subtotal for our youth programs, fiscal year 18 was just under $70,000 to date, and this doesn't include any of our spring or our summer programming. We're already at $53,000 in revenue. So that revenue is tied directly back to participation. So it's not, the higher revenue you have from that is essentially the more people, the more programs that you're offering. So we're really pleased about that. So I think you can see the direct benefit that we have, and we've been a very, very busy department. So we're really proud of that.
Can you have the expenses for the pool broken out separately?
Yep.
The revenues are kind of bundled together. Is there a reason why the pool is not showing separately as a revenue source? So
this is the revolving fund. There is a pool revolving fund spreadsheet that I'll get to in a minute. Okay. The expense from the pool program, when you look at the expense side and you see patent pool program, remember we wanted to, when we made the change to two revolving funds, we wanted to make sure that we were capturing some of that revenue that we were getting from the camp program into the pool revolving fund. So when we get there, I can walk you through that. But that's why we show the pool on the revolving fund spreadsheet, because we're actually accounting for that as we take in revenue and expenses for our camp.
Okay.
And is that relevant to why the projected for FY20 for the pool expenses went down 6,000 from your projected for 19 and your 19 to date? Or I'm not sure how does that all work?
So this particular year, we purchased a call it play equipment for the pool. They're called Wibbits. They're slides. I don't know if anyone joins the local Y. Yeah, they are fun. So that's that extra cost.
okay. So
Yeah,
it's a one-time
it's a one-time
expense.
purchase. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, the Wibbits are fun. So maybe not fun to put up and take down, but we'll see. We'll practice at it. So we're looking forward to that. But yes, no, that's a great question.
And on the fields and facilities, there's that fluctuation that occurs, 16 and 18 are higher, and 17 and 19 are lower. Is that the floors, or
For the revenue?
for expense?
For expense. Yeah, you remember that we do a lot of field and facility maintenance with the revolving fund. Some of it was playgrounds, whether or not we need wood chips. There's a fence goes down there. So there are different things that we really can't, we're gonna buy seed, we're gonna buy fertilizer, we're gonna, do things year after year after year. But if we have an unforeseen, instance, that needs to be taken care of, then, that's where you see the fluctuation in the expense side on it. But as far as the consistent purchases, we're always year to year purchasing some of the same materials for the fields and facilities.
And you use that money to offset other things, like you said before, like the gym floor, and it just depends on.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, so everything that's captured in the revolving fund is user fee generated, whether it's from our programs, from our user fees, from rentals. So this is all, user fee generated.
Thanks.
On the expense side, is any of that included in the cover sheet?
Meaning, I'm sorry,
Well,
I'm
you'd
not following.
mentioned, for example, the ceiling fans and the gym floor were supported by the revolving fund.
So the gym floor was supported by the revolving fund in fiscal year 19. So part of that $17,000 that we're showing to date in expenses on our revolving fund includes some money that we use for the gym floor, correct?
I understand. This is general fund. That's a separate fund.
Yes, but
So
when we were
it's not
talking,
reflected in here.
specifically about the fans and the gym floor cleaning,
It's not, this is just the general fund portion, so it's not reflected. So if you're seeing a $3,000 for the fans in the general fund, the total is $6,000. The other $3,000 is reflected in the revolving fund.
oh, it's already in the revolving fund, okay.
Just a general question about utilization. On town meeting floor in Wenham last year, there was some discussion about supporting the pool, and it got voted, it got passed. But I suspect a question may come up of what's the utilization between the Wenham residents and the Hamilton residents? Do you keep that kind of data?
Yeah, we do. I'd be happy to get it for you. And it's, I don't want to say it's funny, but it normally, with any of the programs, usually ends up being right around between 70-30, 60-40. It always pretty much, yeah, it is kind of, it really works out that way, and really all the kind of the athletic events, or even just the programs in general, it's always a pretty decent split. How it ends up working out that
Might be
way.
a helpful data point
Yeah.
to have at your fingertips, though, in case it comes up at town meeting.
Any questions on the revolving fund? Okay.
No, sir. Thank you.
So moving to the next packet, it's the swimming pool. So the cover page that everyone has, which is the one that's portrait. Yep. Maybe Marissa can explain this one a little bit better than I.
Thank you.
So the cover page is really just a calculation to get to what a total admin costs. It's based on the agreement, so when the agreement was written, there were certain items that were listed as, that were gonna be part of the calculation to come up with an admin cost versus the recreation program. You'll probably, notice in the agreement, it states that the admin cost is gonna be 10%. When the pool agreement was written, the towns moved away from a flat percentage, so they didn't want to say that the admin costs were going to be 10% or 5%. Instead, they came up with this calculation, and that's what this front page is. So it takes into account the time that is spent by the finance department and the town managers, some of the services related to IT and the treasure collector's office, the legal retainer, and then all of that calculation comes out to, the admin fee is $15.99. Projected admin fee for fiscal year 20 is $15.99.
So the pool doesn't pay for all those costs then? So your user fees for the pool cover the second page, but not the first page? Doesn't cover any of the
We
admin?
bill this directly to the town.
I guess I missed that, I'm sorry, ma'am. So how come it didn't pay for it?
That's how the agreement was written.
Okay.
I'm not sure how it was
Okay.
negotiated between the two towns, but when the agreement was written for the pool, that's the calculation that was provided. That we would bill directly the town of Wenham for the admin costs, and these were all the items that were to be included in the calculation. To be honest with you, it's made it very complicated. Because the recreation, you'll notice on the recreation sheet, you'll see a 10%,
Yep.
and that's your admin costs. But the towns didn't wanna do that going forward, so they wanted to actually pinpoint the items that they wanted to be part of their calculation.
According to this, it's some form of proportional share.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. So what ends up happening a lot with the joint programs and the same, with the library in Wenham is, the town of Wenham is responsible for processing payroll for the library, processing payroll, doing, kind of all the admin behind the scenes work, and Wenham will bill Hamilton for that work because it's a joint program, but Wenham Town Hall is doing a majority of the kind of the background work, if you will. The same thing for the recreation department and the pool. We have over 60 seasonal employees, which is paperwork, which is payroll on the Hamilton side, so the Hamilton offices are taking care of that, and then they bill Wenham for that indirect cost. So every joint department is set up pretty similar in that kind of fashion. So that's essentially what, when Marissa talks about the admin cost, that's essentially what it is. It's not essentially the pool admin cost as much as it is town hall admin cost for the work that they're doing to do that for the pool employees. Correct.
Just for a pool?
Yeah, this is just related to the pool.
Nothing to do with nothing to do with other programs?
No, this particular one, it's just for the pool. So like Sean was explaining, we hire 60 employees, so we pay all of those employees through our town of Hamilton's payroll system. We do all the paperwork, all the filing, all the accounting. So that's the calculation that was put together when the agreement was put in place.
And do I have these numbers right? It's 3,000 for Hamilton and 1,600 for,
That's it.
and it's not included in the pool.
No, we bill it directly to the town of Wenham. So we bill the town of Wenham $1,600.
It's odd that we didn't take some of that out of the operating fund of the pool.
I don't see I'm sure I'm missing it, but I don't see liability insurance for the pool. Is that covered under a general liability by the community?
Yes,
So
and
it's
for some
incorporated
reason-
into that?
for some reason, it was not part of the agreement.
So, no, you're not being charged for it,
This
we're
is
just
just-
paying for it.
This is just a reflection of what.
I
was
assume it's a-
included. Yeah,
It's a fairly significant cost for a pool, town pool. Just-
I don't know how I got missing the agreement, but that was well before my time, so.
Yeah.
So moving on to the next and final page for me is the pool revolving fund, revenue and expense, and essentially, along the lines of the recreation revolving fund, you'll see that as of December, we're at a $14,000 deficit in the pool revolving fund for fiscal year 19, and again, pretty similar to the revolving fund. The majority of our expenses happen July, August, and then we'll be recouping them with our passes. So again, if you look back to the fiscal year 18 actual, it's probably the better place to look. And the pool that year had a surplus of about $1,300. So really, when we look at fiscal years, once we close out this fiscal year, we'll have data from fiscal year 18 and fiscal year 19, which are 2 complete fiscal years for the pool. So I think that's going to help us better gauge, are our price points correct? Do we need to modify certain items that we're doing down there? And so I think once we have that info, moving forward, we'll be on, just have more information to draw back on. But, be happy to answer any questions on this sheet as well.
Looks remarkably good, considering you've only got 2 years' experience, really, in it. And with that $6,000, say, surplus for FY19, that almost exactly covers the admin expenses that are between the 2 towns. So it seems like if you take the pool as a whole, then it's pretty much a break-even operation, which is what was promised, and to me, that seems pretty good.
Yeah, it does. Sean, any comments on, so for the first 2 fiscal years for which you have full data, did you hold all kind of prices more or less constant?
So we did. So the first 2 summers we held prices constant. What we noticed last year was the pool was just as busy. We had more drop-ins than we did folks buying the memberships. So this year, and we'll see how it works, we increased the drop-in fee, but we dramatically decreased the individual membership fee. So last year, a youth individual membership was $70 for the entire summer. This year it's going to be $50. So we reduced it by 20, hoping that more folks will buy the memberships as opposed to doing the drop-ins, and we increased the drop-in rate a little bit. Okay, and as we kind of looked at towns that, we're pretty unique because we're resident only, so there's not a lot of information out there of towns that just allow only residents to use the pool. So as we kind of looked at some other communities or like communities, we saw that was kind of where they were heading. And of course, all the communities that have swimming pools, when we meet at our rec conferences and things like that, we're always talking about that. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes this summer. And again, it makes it a little less we're relying a little bit less on the weather if we're doing it that way than if we're actually for drop-ins, because you never know what's going to happen. So hopefully that will give us a more constant number where folks are really buying the memberships as opposed to doing the drop-ins. And if you're going to be an active member of the pool, really the membership, when you do the math, is probably your best bet.
I had one question. So when do we start putting repairs in? After what we know everything's new, right? So when do you think we'll start have to add repair expenses?
Yeah, so I think, for us, usually, there's still a number of things that are under warranty. And I think it's, we do the best we can with deferred maintenance. We have a pool company, the pool company that built the pool comes in, they open the pool, do anything that needs to happen. When the pool opens, they come in and they close the pool down. We have someone come in and winterize the buildings. So I think, as long as we keep up with the deferred maintenance, I would say probably, and nothing major for, 10, 15 years or so.
One thing I might think, one thing we may want to think about, that's a fantastic question, but putting in a bit more in that revolving fund so that you have something in the long run.
Retained earnings that can be used later.
There you go.
That's right.
So yeah, and I think that's always tricky because that means you're just charging folks more. So I think it's one of those fine lines, and that's why when we look at our fiscal years from year to year to year, that's when we'll really be able to get better data. Prices are going to go up anyways because minimum wage in 3 years is going to be $15. So when I started in 2007, it was $8. Now it's going to be $15. So those are all things that when we look at our pricing that we need to take into account of, because minimum wage, not only for our lifeguards but also for our counselors, this year it's $12. Last year was $11. Next year is going to be $12.75. So those are all items that we're constantly taking into account.
Is there any rules or anything on a cap for your, for lack of a better word, I'm using the wrong word, for your profit? I mean, is there a cap in terms of how much you can accrue? It goes back to the repairs.
So revolving funds are really set up in a way that the fees pay for the services. It's not great accounting, and Marissa can kind of expand it.
To accumulate funds.
Well, that's what I was asking, is there a cap?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's not a specific cap. When it gets to be a certain, like a large amount, the auditors usually pick it up during the audit, and they'll say, you know, you might have to adjust your fees because we're noticing that your revolving fund is growing. It's supposed to just be to cover, the user fees are supposed to cover the cost of the programs, but not necessarily to have a profit.
So
But
what
they
about a
should be
capital,
able to
what about a
cover-
capital
Yeah,
fund?
that's what I was gonna say, the
Hmm.
maintenance and
Yeah,
upkeep for future years.
I think we can
Retained
include
earnings or
that so
something.
that for capital needs, we do have something, you know, in the revolving fund.
Mhm.
But if if they notice that it's starting to grow, then they will point it out. Either the DOR will point it out, or the auditors, they'll point out and they'll say, I've been in communities in which they say you have to revise your user fees because it looks like this is a profit making, not just covering costs.
Is it possible to make an account in a revolving fund like a capital stabilization fund?
Or even create a stabilization fund and just take your free cash and move it over.
Your retained earnings,
Well, we
yeah.
can't create a capital stabilization fund for the revolving fund,
Right.
but, you know, you can have a capital stabilization that if there's a need for a major, capital improvement, then you wanna use stabilization funds as a funding source, you can do that.
Yeah, but it's
No, I
gonna
mean
be for
something that's paid
repairs.
for out of the revolving fund, though. In other words, if you say, showed $10,000 revenue over expenses every year, and then in 4 years, you got a $40,000 expense because you need to remodel the
This-
bathrooms or whatever, there's no way
The
to,
state doesn't really like you to do
Plan
that in
for that.
revolving funds. Revolving funds have a particular purpose. If you wanted to do that, we could talk to both town meetings about establishing an enterprise fund instead. Enterprise funds
Okay.
are legitimately set up to be able to do that. You're not supposed to do them with revolving funds.
Okay.
So, you know, it'd be a more intensive process, and it's something we'd have to get passed by both town meetings in order to do, but that would be the only way to really do that.
I would think that like a 5-year look would make sense to understand what you think you're up against, like covers are under snow and ice, you know, pumps are gonna fail over time, but it's all brand new.
Yeah.
So I think it's a great point you raise. There's definitely something you would expect to replace over time in the probably $3,000 to $5,000 range that might start to make a material impact on the numbers. Well, certainly that would. Sean, quick
Yeah.
question for you. Do you know roughly, so pool, you lowered the junior or the youth. Did you also lower the family membership?
The family member is going to stay at 180.
Okay.
The youth, senior, adult, guest pass, all the individual ones are going to remain.
Okay.
The family is 180, and that's for 4. So, you know, if you did 2 adults and 2 children, individual passes, that would run you about 210 if you're buying it individually. So if you buy as a family, there is a savings cost associated with that as a family pass compared to buying the equal number of individual passes.
And do you know a rough cut of the $48,000 that you're budgeting for pool pass revenue? How much is day-to-day drop-in percentage versus membership, annual membership?
Yes, so it's about between 85 and 90% are memberships.
Okay.
And the drop-ins. And remember, I mean, even though we had a large number of drop-ins, you know, the drop-ins were $5.
Small percentage
So
of your total revenue.
yeah, so I mean, it's $5. You know, it's going to takes an awful lot of drop-ins to get
Absolutely,
to
yeah.
get up there. And I think, you know, that's it, you know, when we talk to folks about the pool, I think, you know, and just in the community, you know, we wanted to make sure, you know, we told folks that it would improve our camp program. That certainly is the case. You know, a lot of folks wanted to keep it resident only, so we're maintaining that, and we're maintaining the fact that the pool is paying for itself. So I think great points on, you know, deferred maintenance or capital items, but you know, I think for the functionality that we wanted to get from the pool, we're certainly kind of checking off all the boxes.
I would agree, it was just a thought.
No, it's great. Yeah, great point.
Point taken.
Yeah.
It's, I will just say quickly, The swim lessons in particular are awesome. The lifeguard, so my 6-year-old, now 6-year-old, has done, I guess, both seasons, swim lessons, and all the lifeguards are hands down amazing with
we've been
real little ones to swim.
Yeah, we've been really lucky. We have a lot of good crew. And, you know, I think one of the nice things about the lifeguards and our staff is we probably had between 25 and 30 lifeguards. I'd say, 88%, 90%, I did the math when I had to do a report, are Hamilton Wenham residents. So it's really great that we're giving back. And for the camp program, it's almost 100%. So, you know, I think that's a really kind of an indirect, bonus for these programs, as we're offering and providing a lot of jobs for, for the youth in town.
Quick question on the professional services, Sean. I think you described the 8,000 earlier, but is that the closing, the opening, that kind of the winterization, is that included in that?
Yep, so that's all included in that number. In fiscal year 18, and I'm not sure who here has been to the pool, but and that number is a little bit higher from fiscal year 17. In fiscal year 18, we moved the fence back to create a little more green space. So that number there is a little bit higher than we were anticipating for that one cost. But yeah, the professional services are, winterizing the buildings, winterizing the pool, exactly.
And can you comment on what are the uniforms?
Lifeguard uniforms. So we provide, all the lifeguards need to have, it's a state mandate, they all need to have uniforms. So we provide our lifeguards with 2 or 3 t-shirts apiece, as well as 2 or 3 long sleeve shirts that say, Veterans Memorial Pool in the front. They have to say guard on the back. We also provide our swim team with swim caps.
And the certification for the lifeguards, are they all WSI, senior life-saving?
Yep, so in order to work, the Board of Health inspects the pool, and the Board of Health, we need to provide all relevant certifications for our lifeguards to the Board of Health. They come in and they inspect the pool, and they're really the ones that say, you guys can operate and you can run, and they come in and they inspect it. Probably come in, well, maybe more than we like. No, just they probably come in maybe once every 2 or 3 weeks. But certainly, and I think that's, one of the things that, you bring up a good point, not to get too far off the subject, but just, as we see a shortage in lifeguards, we're working with the local YMCAs on that, because in order to work for the pool, you need to have a lifeguard certification, obviously. But in order to get a lifeguard certification, it costs $350, $350. So, you're paying for a certification just to work. So I think we're working with the local Ys. We're actually offering a reduced rated class over in Danvers YMCA, the February vacation. So hopefully we'll get, we already have one signed up, but hopefully we'll have a few more register for that in order to work for us. So it is, it is a tricky thing, because they do need to keep up to date on their certifications, and it's, it's not easy.
Do you offer lifeguard classes at the pool?
So we don't offer lifeguard classes at the pool, no. We, because of the way that the season is, the lifeguard classes are pretty intensive. So if we were to offer a lifeguard class for a week, like we're doing in February vacation, it runs 9 to 5. So it's about a 40-hour course. So really, when we operate during the summer, we're in our operation. That kind of outweighs the fact of, we'd obviously have to close the pool to the public on those times. So, when we're open, we want to be as open and as available to the public as possible. So that's pretty much the main reason why we wouldn't offer a class, is just how intensive and the amount of pool hours that you need.
Any thoughts on being open for Labor Day this year?
So the plan is to open through Labor Day this year. And, I think we'll see kind of, how that works with everything. We'd be one of the few municipal pools to open through Labor Day. Certainly, towns that are like us, Weston, Lincoln, they all close when we used to close. Weston is actually open one less week than we are. So the only 2 towns that I found that were open through Labor Day were Belmont and Lexington. Belmont actually opens 3 weeks or 2 weeks after we open, so we'd be as open as much as like Lexington would be. So we'll see how it goes, and again, I think that kind of takes into account all the different things that we have to juggle, with staffing or how much to charge. One of the things, I think the rhetoric or it becomes the kids go away to college, and that's why we can't have them lifeguards. We actually, on the other hand, lose a lot of our high school lifeguards because they're playing sports or they're active in fall sports. So, August 25th comes around, double sessions for soccer start, and that pretty much wipes out, a good amount of our workforce. So the part of the hiring process this year is we're going to make sure that we have lifeguards that, a decent amount of lifeguards that can work through Labor Day.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.
John.
Nice job.
Thank you.
Is it difficult to set up? No, it's not any more difficult to set up, it's just a different section you have to adopt. Oh, yeah, it has to be adopted.
Yeah. Jen, I think you're up.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. You're leaving us.
Yeah, congratulations.
Congrats.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Hopefully it's not because of these updates.
The updates?
Yeah, that's not why you're leaving, why you're retiring.
No.
It's not my department head meetings.
It's your what?
It's not the department head meetings.
No.
Good.
No.
Glad to hear that.
Just a comment, Jan, we're going to miss you.
Oh, thank you.
And thank you for your 14 years of service to the community. It's well appreciated. You've developed a wonderful program there.
Well, thank you. I'm going to miss being here in many ways. These meetings, maybe not so much, but no, but I will miss being here. It's been great to work here, and I thank you all for all your support. So I don't know if you have the same 3 pages that I have. I just want to make sure. Yes, okay. Just want to make sure we're talking on the same pieces of paper. So the library budget is the standard format really hasn't changed so from year to year. So I'm just going to go from each budget item one after the other, and certainly stop me if you have any questions on anything. The salaries this year, we had a few changes. One is we had a retirement. Our head of technical services retired. So there, you'll see that on 0008. And so the new employee will be making a little bit less than she was making at the end of her tenure. So there's a change there. Another change that we weren't really expecting we had to do, but we actually worked with Patty Moore quite a bit on this. Because of the increase to the minimum wage, we had to adjust our lower part-time salaries so that they would also be in keeping with the minimum wage increase. Otherwise, we would end up with our BA required librarians not making much more than minimum wage. So we had to do a little bit of adjustment with that. And that's reflected in the increase to 0010. The rest of the increases you see in salaries is due to a 2% COLA and librarians moving up on the wage matrix. The next section is library materials. There is a slight increase there so that we can keep up with our state mandated expenditure requirement of 16% of our budget. And we have put that into more online electronic resources. We found that people really appreciate and are enjoying the online New York Times, things like that, that they can access 24/7 from the library. We put in more e-books and e-audio books and things like that, so we're going to continue to increase that part of our budget. We have no increase for periodicals and newspapers. That's stayed relatively current and constant, and we have kept all our subscriptions, except for the ones that have totally gone digital that we can't keep. On the technology section, technology in this part of our budget is basically our fee that we have to pay to the Merrimack Valley Library Consortium. And the Merrimack Valley Library Consortium, their fee didn't really go up that much, but the e-content that we get through the Merrimack Valley has been separated out, because that is also part of our materials requirement. It counts toward it with the state. So it is easier for budgetary purposes to separate that out from the actual consortium fee. And that consortium fee includes all the cataloging that's done, all the records, the online catalog, and all the work that's along with that, as well as our software and our connectivity to the other 36 member libraries. We've also tried to keep stable our general supplies and office supplies, that line item, just hoping to keep that kind of stable. So I did not increase that at all, nor did I increase anything on memberships, conferences, and travel. Those are both the same as last year. Under programs, the $500 under programs really only pays for our software that you see when you go to our website, where you can actually remotely decide to choose a museum pass, and you can also see what's going on at the library on our event calendar. Basically, the Friends of the Library provide for the bulk of all our programming that we do. So I always want to give a big thank you to the Friends, because they generally give us about $15,000 a year to pay for all the lectures, film licenses, and things that we do in the summer reading program. So that all comes from outside the budget. We did add a little bit to our heat and utilities, because our electricity and gas costs were up, and our actuals were up, and so we just wanted to account for that this year. Hopefully that won't continue. We're monitoring it, but because it did go up, we wanted to be prepared for that. Our buildings and grounds maintenance, again, this we tried to keep as level funded as possible. However, we're still moving and transitioning from having a volunteer IT support person to a company. So we're trying each year to actually include the entire cost in our budget. Right now, we're paying for about half of it. The $8,970 is about half, and the rest of that is coming from library state aid. So I don't know if
excuse me, the total cost for IT support, that is almost $20,000 a year. And next year would be almost $23,000 a year, or something, $24,000 a year. Is that fair to say?
No, next year.
It's 11.9,
right,
the state aid.
The state aid will kick in probably about $8,000 or $9,000.
But it's still a fairly
it's very expensive.
Line item, which it needs to be.
Well, we have well over 50 machines, and a server and a print server, and staff machines and public machines have to be equipped with special software so that when somebody's done with the machine and it gets rebooted, everything they did is erased. And that way the public can't really do things to damage the machines as well. So it's kind of a specialized thing.
So no new computers on the budget? None are in need of replacement?
Oh, we do.
Okay.
But we're still in flux and in limbo on the capital budget in Wenham.
Yep.
So I'm not sure how much of that will be funded.
Okay, from the capital side. Yep.
Right. But we try to do a rotating computer, try not to have to replace all the computers at once. We try to do a few every year.
Yep. Two quick questions.
Sure.
I guess the first one, so you mentioned the state mandated 16%. Is that of total of expenses that go towards library materials at a minimum?
It's 16% of our operating budget,
Of the total operating budget?
yes.
Okay. And, right, and we're at 132, right? 132,000 on roughly $1 million, or no?
Also, the $10,000 for subscriptions counts,
Gotcha,
yeah. This-
okay. I was
And
just
the
curious where we
Merrimack
were
and
roughly.
the e-content assessment counts as well.
Okay, that's right, you had mentioned that. And then the elevator repair, which I know was substantial, that doesn't fall on here, right?
Well, the elevator repair was substantial, and basically, we paid for it. Some of it came from budgetary repair money, the buildings and grounds maintenance.
Yeah.
We also had a couple of capital funds that we used. We used state aid money, and the Friends actually donated $10,000 toward it as well.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that will not ever happen again.
Right, one time, yeah. Thank you.
What is that noise outside?
Hmm?
What is that noise? Sounds like a ship's horn.
I'm all set.
Any questions?
For Jen? No?
I'm good.
You've done a marvelous job, by the way. It's a wonderful resource for the towns. It's used, I think, a lot.
It is used a
The
lot.
online part is also excellent.
Yeah.
Good. I'm glad you're able to avail yourself of that.
Yeah.
No, we're all very proud of our library and appreciate everyone's support. It's been wonderful to work for such supportive towns, believe me, and people that really care
Mhm.
and treasure their library. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jan.
Let me see.
You know where she's going?
She's retiring.
Period.
Mhm.
So the next one on the agenda is actually the Emergency Center Operations.
Got it.
This one is pretty small. This had to do with when the town of Wenham and Hamilton had a joint emergency center operations, which is no longer the case. And this relates to the retiree expenditures. It includes the health insurance, life insurance, and pension liability. The health insurance and the life insurance, as I mentioned on the recreation program, the health insurance has a 6% estimate increase as part of the budget. Again, we will only bill you based on what the actual ends up being. And the life insurance, there's also an estimate as part of that number. The pension liability, we actually get that number from the Essex Retirement Board. This is one of the older IMAs, so you'll notice that there was still a 10% admin fee as part of that program. And that brings the Wyndham's share to a $24,000, $361. And the rest of the page, it just shows you the details on who the retirees are and what the benefits are for each one of them.
So this covers 9 employees currently, a couple in retirement.
That's right.
And the
So there's
others
only
that are-
2, and then there's ones that are future liabilities.
Right.
Yeah, and then we had on the second page, it shows that there are 3 of them that actually take health insurance and 3 that actually take life insurance. And this represents the town's share. Any questions? I know. There's not a lot there.
It is.
Yeah.
Not a lot of discretionary.
No,
Yeah,
as we go.
okay. The next one is the energy manager. So, as you know, we have an agreement between the town of Wenham, and actually the Hamilton-Wenham Regional School District, in which we actually all share an energy manager. It is a town of Hamilton employee. It is the person gets paid through our payroll, and then what we do is we bill the town of Wenham and we bill the Hamilton-Wenham Regional School District. As part of the agreement, it is stated that in January, both or all towns agree to a number of hours they will allow the energy manager to work in the future years. So for fiscal year 20, I contacted Peter Lombardi and also the Hamilton-Wenham Regional School District, and they provide us with a total. They didn't say a total of hours, but what they said was it was up to $5,000 for the year. So whatever the number of hours ended up being, which is 143 hours for the year. And that's really what this calculation is. You'll see, I just, for illustration purposes, I just gave you a summary too, so you can see what the hourly rate is and what the number of hours will be for the full year, which adds up to the $5,000 limit that both Town of Wenham and Hamilton-Wenham Regional School District gave us as a limit. And the hourly rate, it's simply based on the wage grid that we have. It includes a 2% COLA and an S-step for that position. And then it includes the Medicare portion.
So Wenham just backs into the hours afforded by the not to exceed 5,000.
Yes,
And the school
exactly.
does the same.
The school did the same thing.
Right, right.
Yeah.
How's that cap set? I might have missed that. I mean, how does?
It's, the towns agree to that cap, so, yes. So the towns agree, I think in the agreement it states during the month of January, when you're working on your budget for the next fiscal year, the towns agree to a number of hours or a dollar amount that they think that they will need the energy manager for that particular fiscal year. So we were told that there's not a lot of programs or projects out there, so both Hamilton, Wenham, and School District and Wenham said that they would go with a $5,000 cap.
Is this a necessary position? What benefit, I guess more importantly, what benefit does this position provide for the three entities?
Well, I know that she's done a lot of work when it comes to grants. She recently actually got a $250,000 grant for the town of Wenham and a $250,000 for the town of Wenham. She actually has a lot of smaller grants that I can think of on the Hamilton side. I'm not sure on Wenham side if she has applied for grants, but I know that there are a few grants out there for energy efficiency programs. She also looks into the solar. I think she's working, I believe, with our town manager with the solar project. I know she works with the DPW department as well. One of the projects that she worked on was the street lighting. So these are some of the projects that I know in the 2 years that I've been here that she has worked with, worked on.
If I could offer too, that she's also responsible for all of our reporting to the state for green communities, and both communities and the school district are green communities, so there's annual reporting that goes along with that in order to keep us eligible for competitive round grant funds through DOER. So without us having her, we probably fall behind in that and be at risk of losing those funds.
I remember she paid for herself just with the lights, the street lights.
Yeah, absolutely. And these numbers, I have to be honest with you, I've never seen her actually
I'm close to that.
come close to these numbers. So I think we're halfway through the year, she's not even close to that number. So she only bills us for the hours worked. So this budget is our limit. It doesn't mean that we're actually gonna reach it.
I would just point out, the variance calculation here is actually the sum of that column instead of the variance between the two totals, right?
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Thank you.
Pretty minor
Um,
detail.
Formula problem.
Yeah.
I apologize. You will notice too on that summary sheet that unemployment is 0 for fiscal year 20 versus fiscal year 19. This is a ongoing discussion that we had. When this program was first implemented and the IMA was signed by both communities, there was a percentage that was being charged for unemployment. The more that we talked about it, we said, okay, why did we come up with that percentage, and why are we charging this, ahead of time? So what we talked about was, we've been communicating with Peter Lombardi, was, okay, can we maybe amend the agreement to say, we won't charge you for any unemployment, but if she actually files for unemployment in the future, then it would be a shared expense. So I just removed that completely from the IMA, because to be honest with you, I wasn't sure where that percentage came from. So I brought it up and I said, can we talk about this, and maybe there's a better way of doing. And I know there's other programs, other joint programs that we have, that's how the IMA is written, is that we won't charge anything, and if she does happen to file for unemployment, that at that point in time, we would have a shared expense.
Mhm.
That's the reason for the 0 in fiscal year 20.
Makes sense. I mean, we're also budgeting so much higher than the actual amount anyway.
It has been in the past, absolutely.
And she performs these services for other municipalities, presumably?
I know she has in the past. She's previously worked for Swampscott and other communities as well. She's very well thought of in the energy
Yes.
manager world,
She
and
is.
she does an excellent job for us. So,
Yeah.
one of my roles in my previous employment was to I helped us hire the energy manager. Before that, I was the one doing the reporting to the state, which I don't envy her. I'm glad she's doing it for us now. Ran into her in those kind of circles, and she's great. So
She does a great
I was very glad
job.
to hear that she was our energy manager when we got her.
Yeah, she definitely does a great job. Any other questions? No?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Pleasant Pond?
He was going to discuss Pleasant Pond since he's not here yet. We may as well hand over to
Oh, okay.
There he is.
Perfect timing.
Excellent timing.
Question for me?
Pleasant
Pond. Happy to slide in. How you doing?
Good,
Start with that.
good to see you.
Here. Parachuting in. Is there a question, or you just want me to talk through it?
Yeah, just
Dive in.
kind of walk us through
Okay.
what we got. That's what we've been doing.
Okay. So, pretty straightforward budget. In terms of expenses, we generally hire and staff for the summer 6 lifeguards and 6 gatekeepers. That's been the staffing that's been in place. That's kind of a little variable depending on everybody's availability with high school and college kids for the most part. So sometimes there's a few more just to make sure we've got coverage and everything throughout the summer, which is a challenge just like it is for Sean in terms of lifeguard coverage in particular near the end of the summer. So that's just over $21,000 a year. That's in our police department budget. What's a little unique about Pleasant Pond is the funding for it's in a bunch of different places, so we kind of gobble it all together and show it here. But we are proposing to increase the hourly rate for lifeguards to be competitive, up to $15 an hour for FY20. And that $21,000 reflects that number.
It does reflect it?
It does. Yep, and then the expenses, most are about $2,500 of that 3,500 is in the police department budget. It's just an expense line item for utilities, medical supplies, and just some miscellaneous items down the pond. And then the other $1,000, just over $1,000, is included in the Board of Health budget. That's for the weekly water testing throughout the summer months. And so total budget is just short of $25,000, and the way that the intermunicipal agreement is structured, it's a 3-year rolling average of sticker sales, the split between Hamilton and Wenham, and the sticker sales are actually up generally. They've gone up pretty consistently over the past 4 years. There was another jump this past summer, almost 25 more stickers, so just under 200 or 180 stickers, excuse me.
Thanks to Hamilton.
Yeah,
Nice jump.
it's really a lot of
We sent out a mailer.
A lot of Hamilton residents. We kind of thought that the stickers were going to go up when the pool was closed, and then they were going to drop back down. But what we've seen is a steady increase in the level of interest, residents both sides, and more in Hamilton. It's almost a 50-50 split this past summer. So the net result of that
Residents.
is
The shift is working in
that's
your
right.
this time.
Yes, little different size.
Sorry, I don't mean to be joking about it. I'm sorry.
30
Apportionment formula jokes.
That's right.
Sorry.
But that, yeah, the
I was
3-year
doing the same
rolling
thing.
average didn't come from nowhere. So this year it's a just under 62% share for Wenham, and just over 38% share for Hamilton. So it's
So Peter, how much is the income?
Yeah.
How much from sticker sales?
so sticker sale income. I do not have that at my fingertips.
General fund, right?
What's that? Yeah, it goes into the general fund.
Oh, I tried.
It's we are pretty.
What do you charge?
So it's
Like 25 or 30?
$20 the first, and then 10 each additional.
And the senior price as well.
Yeah, and the senior is 10. Yeah,
So these numbers are individuals?
their number of stickers.
Number 10 stickers.
Yeah, so it's the sticker goes on a car.
So if you have 2 cars, it only costs you $35 to get 2 stickers instead of 50.
So you could load up the car.
That's right.
Yeah.
Got it. Drive-in movie theater.
I don't know if I'll find it at any time soon, Mike.
That's okay.
All right.
Thanks. Thank you.
So it's just over $9,400 for Hamilton's share this year, and just over 15 for Wenham.
Okay.
And this is a question. The problems that we've had in the past years at Pleasant Pond have dropped dramatically, and that has continued. Vandalism, kids
Yeah.
down there drinking.
Yes, so that was
that kind of
the
stuff.
stories of Pleasant Pond Past
Right.
back a decade plus ago. You know, we did a lot of work with the neighbors originally.
Right.
Yeah, of course, there was that tragic incident that happened down there about a decade ago. And they've done a really nice job. It looks,
It looks
a
good.
lot better than it did back then, well-maintained.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, there have not been any significant
continuing
issues
problems.
down there of note. And I think having, more of an active presence, and the police certainly, where the staff are under police supervision, they're down there, part of their just regular patrols, so a little more police presence, all that helps.
Is it just water flowing, or is it chemical, are there chemicals used?
Oh, no, it's just a
It's a
freshwater pond.
Yeah, it's just
Freshwater pond.
Just freshwater pond.
There's no algae or no,
No, we actually have not. We had one.
We had one bad
Water
testing
test this
over
year.
the last summer due to that really heavy period of rain we had over the summer.
But-
But otherwise, since I've been here, other than that 1 week, it's been perfectly clean.
Yeah, four summers, really good water quality. Yeah.
and there's no bubbler or aerator?
No, nothing.
It's a good sized pond. Have you ever been there?
It is
Have you
sprinkled.
been there?
I've seen it once,
It's a good
once
sized
or
pond.
twice.
Yeah.
That's our major water source in town. So, we hope that it's in good condition in terms of the water quality. That's it.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Pretty straight, yeah.
Okay.
I think that leaves Jackie. You only have one department today?
Yeah, it's nice. It's very nice, but a little bit too, because we have two halves of our whole now that were shared with Hamilton.
Right.
So we don't want to forget our other half of down the street. I'm not sure what you have in front of you tonight. I think the first piece that's probably included, yes, that. I also have a summary sheet that's a bigger breakdown, but I'll start with the spreadsheet you have in front of you. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm Jackie Bresnahan. I'm the permitting coordinator and special projects manager. So I manage the Board of Health office, the inspectional services program with the building department, and then, you know, special projects as assigned. So I'm around here a lot. The one thing I want to clarify before I start is that the admin roles in both communities, while the admin role for Wenham is shown in this spreadsheet in front of you, this is because this is the breakdown of the Wenham line item. But so at the end of my presentation, I'll speak to you about Wenham assessment versus Hamilton assessment with and without admin support. But for now, I'm just going to talk about it from the Wenham perspective for the line item. So as you can see for salary, there's two full-time employees, myself and the building inspector, both with budgeted 2% COLA, 2% merit in Wenham. I'm not sure if you've heard this before. We have the 2% non-union merit. It's up to 2%, so that's budgeted in here. The other two positions you'll see that have a base salary are eligible for 2% COLA. However, we do not have the 2% COLA factored in for the plumbing inspector at this time because this is a slight increase from last year for the plumbing and gas inspector. We had done some salary work on the plumbing and gas position when we first were putting out the posting for the shared model, but the more feedback we've gotten from our new building inspector, our full-time building inspector, and some other professionals that are a little more local. Our plumbing and gas inspector was about less than half of what the electrical inspector was making, and they have very similar workloads. And the plumbing inspector has actually been with the town of Wenham since 2001-ish, and has been with Hamilton for about 2 years, whereas the electrical inspector is a new hire, so to speak. He had been serving as one of the Wenham assistant wiring inspectors. So this is just a slight correction to that salary because I think that that's an internal equity issue for us, and I think it's also an external equity issue. And that plumbing inspector handles everything for plumbing and gas in both communities. So there's quite a bit of responsibility there. So that's where you'll see a big change on the salary side. Finally, you'll note just a small stipend amount for the 3 backup positions. Historically, Wenham did not have a paid, formally appointed backup. We had, you know, a good system of neighbors being neighborly, which works until it doesn't, and it's something that was a goal of mine when I started here in Wenham about 3.5 years ago. So we now have a formally appointed person in both the backup plumbing and backup electrical roles, and we are working I actually met with Patrick Reffett from Hamilton and Mary Ellen Femer, who's the admin in Hamilton, and with Brian Leith, our building inspector today, so we can solidify someone in that local backup building inspector role. We hadn't done so at the beginning of the shared model, but Brian is finally hitting that time where he gets vacation, so we want to be sure that we've got someone solid in that local backup role before he goes away for any trips. But that's just to keep, you know, services running, not a lot of heavy plan review or zoning enforcement, but if there is an emergency zoning, which sounds like it shouldn't happen, but it does, or just to keep the, you know, the building inspections flowing. We've got all of those backup roles now, which we've learned is really good to have so that folks can genuinely have a vacation, particularly with the electrical inspector, that person does do a lot of on-call time, a lot of emergency response. So when they go away on vacation, it's important to have someone who is definitely here in that capacity. The fire department does rely on that role quite a bit.
And who are the backups? Where do are they local professionals or?
Correct.
Is that what they are?
So our assistant inspector of wires is Dennis Curran, who works locally, has a good-sized business, and is a Wenham resident. And then our assistant plumbing and gas inspector is David Perrine, and he's on the fire department in Essex and is a backup to about 3 other plumbing inspectors. So he is not a plumbing inspector in any community outright, but he is the backup to several. So really good knowledge base there. He's been doing backup work for Kevin Dash here in Wenham, informally for some time, you know, family emergency, things like that. But since I've been here, we've had him formally appointed, and there's a stipend for that role, just so that everything's, you know, formal and on the books. So that's the salary detail. Again, this is just from the Wenham perspective. I think I really want to talk about the expenses tonight, because that does apply to both communities. So this is a significant increase from last year. I want to speak to that in a couple of different ways. The first thing is that there was budgeting in Hamilton and in Wenham separately as part of FY19. The original $15,000 in expense last year was a plug number. It was a new program. We were starting out with the IMA. We hadn't hired the inspectors yet, and there were some things we didn't consider. For example, Hamilton had money set aside for mileage, which Wenham did not. So this corrects that mileage. So this is based on electrical and plumbing actuals in Hamilton with some math done out to be sure it's appropriate for plumbing and electrical to have mileage in both communities. It also accounts for some maintenance for the car. The building inspector has a hand-me-down car from the police. It used to be a police administrative vehicle. We're very fortunate to have that hand-me-down. We're very, very appreciative. But we just needed to build in some funds that we have been expending this year. We want to be upfront about it for FY20. You know, basic things, new tires, oil changes, stickers, all that basic things. We also found that in both offices our code book library was a little more out of date than it ought to be. And we also have a lot of new code books coming out. So if you're planning on redoing your bathroom, the new plumbing code comes out next year, so be ready. So that is something that we definitely wanted to budget for. Finally, we did not include a phone line item for plumbing and electrical inspectors in that original $15K. We only right now are funding a phone for the building inspector. The phones are going to be a critical component. Number one, because they're in a shared role, they're doing a lot more. It's important for us to be able to be in touch with them, but also we have the new e-permitting software that has a mobile app, so they'll be doing all of their reporting and tracking on the mobile app, which is going to be a big time saver for them, and reduce a lot of the hard copies and paper in our offices, but also would give us a lot more efficient communication between the different areas of inspection. And the last major change that I want to address I'm sorry, Mike, yes?
So is it their phones?
They're currently using their personal devices for electrical and plumbing, which is difficult because they are receiving a lot of traffic on their phones, code questions, fire calls, you know, conversations with the building inspector, the fire captain.
So you're just paying for the service?
Yeah, correct. We'd be paying for the service. We pay for the building inspector now, and we'd be adding on the plumbing and gas and electrical inspectors. And I will say that while these two folks are part-time, they're a different part-time concept than, for example, a health agent or someone like the energy manager who can often just be coming into town hall for the 9 to 5 and some night meetings. These folks, when the time comes, they are the folks that have to get up out in the middle of the night. They do answer to some emergency calls. When we had the Cherry Street gas explosion, our plumbing inspector was out, you know, very promptly with the fire department. So we want to be sure that we're in good communication with those folks. They're using a lot of personal funds to fund those phones, so I think this is a necessary service for us to be including. Hamilton was funding it at some level historically. Wenham has never funded it, though it's always been my goal, and now with this shared program, both inspectors are at 10 to 15 hours a week on a regular basis, and a lot of phone calls, a lot of communication, so I think it really makes sense.
Jackie, we're talking about new phones for those two
Correct.
employees that are town phones. We're not gonna be paying them
Oh,
for use
yeah.
of their phones. We're gonna buy the phones.
Yeah, it's a town line,
We're gonna be adding those two cell phones.
and we'll keep the device.
Yep.
That's our device.
Well, so the 540 is not to cover their service costs. That's for 3 new
No,
phones? 3
it's for
phones at
one
540?
phone we're currently paying for and 2 new phones that are a line and a phone.
Why would they want a separate phone? I mean, you're up at 2 in the morning either way, whether your phone rings or a second phone. It's even more of a hassle, right, to have a second phone.
Not from their perspective.
But the phone's not, it's junk in 2 years anyway. It's not, the town owns it, but it's
Yeah.
not, it's
Right,
not
yeah,
worth
it's-
anything.
None of us own our phones anymore.
Throwaway.
Yeah,
I mean, in their place, I would prefer bring your own device, the $50 a
It's
month-ish
a
cost of
business
service.
expense for them, though.
right?
They have their own companies, and it's hard to do, you really shouldn't be mixing up your business calls.
But they can't declare the expense if we're paying for it.
That's right.
If the town's paying for the phone, they can't declare it.
well, so I think what's
The other one they could.
what's important is that while it's an important tool for that they actually are still using the phone, they also will have their email on it, which is something that we want to encourage them to have their email, and that's hard to have on your personal device for some people. But also it'll allow us to have that mobile app.
What kind of phones were you buying?
Well, it is just the most basic version that can have the mobile app from e-permitting, which is definitely something I sold with the e-permitting, was that these phones were coming, because I think that's for us one of the advantages of those mobile phones is that the app is going to be tracking their mileage, helping them with the geography of the inspectional routes. It's a major function of the e-permitting software. So this is just something that was always coming down the line, and now that e-permitting is real, the phones are a part of it as well.
Don't wanna go down a rabbit hole, but,
Sure.
We're already there.
yeah, so $560 for 3 phones.
No, 540.
40 each inspector.
540 each for the year.
That's,
I'm not sold on phones. I mean, I get the permitting software is on it, the mileage tracking, a couple small towns. I mean, how much could it really be doing? But that's just my.
I mean, I'll play devil's advocate too, that we do fund phone service for our burial agent, for example, because they have,
Service.
wants to get rid of that.
service.
Service I get. You're using
Yeah.
it all the time. Inspectors are basically on call 24/7 to
Yeah.
an earlier point. So if we're paying $50, I mean, any kind of group plan, you're $30 a subscriber
Yeah.
line, something like that. Maybe more if you only have 1 or 2 lines on your.
Yeah, we'll be doing it
cover
through,
all.
yeah, we'll be doing it through Sprint, who's where we do all of our Wenham lines. It's the cheapest phone that I could get with the mobile based on like the current sales that are there, the current offers. So I will say I do think it's a good function to have for our department. I think it's a necessary evil at this point. It's 2019. I think we have been slowly trying to pull inspectional services in particular into the 21st century. And I think, unfortunately, this is a necessary evil to that in terms of making the e-permitting software more effective, but also just to the level of business that they're doing on their personal phones. I think, it's part of what they're doing. So.
I would think it'd be, the other side of the argument is to keep the personal business separate from the town
Not
business.
mingle.
And, because you can track the town business, it can get a little dicey, I would think, at some points if you have your
That's usually, that was the story for a while, but I think most
You
people
don't- you
have
don't buy the-
consolidated. Yeah,
I
it's just
don't
one,
know.
I mean,
it's the same, nope.
I will say something that maybe a finance committee doesn't think about, for example, with the building inspector or even the electrical inspector, we've had to do public records requests, and if it's all on a town phone, it's something that we own, their town emails on it, it's clean for that type of purpose, and I think that doesn't have a financial value, but to me it does have an operational value that exists, and so I think that's something that I know that especially with the zoning enforcement or with particularly problem properties, is when those come up and you're doing a public records request for like every single communication you've ever had about a property, every inspection report. I think that's definitely a non-numerical value, a non-financial value to this.
It's the same cost either way. I mean, if we're paying somebody $50 a month,
Right.
that's actually a little more than the
Right.
$540 a year.
True.
So cost-wise,
Yeah,
it's
cost-wise, it's
neutral.
basically the same.
It's just
Yeah.
really operational.
It's operational because they're Yeah, they're junk in a couple of years. I think we're on the same page. I won't belabor that. So Jackie,
Sure.
So 27,920 is that's Wenham's portion, or is that shared?
So this is shared expenses. So this includes, and that's something I want to touch on before I move away from expenses, is that the permitting software in this line item, that 18,000, covers Wenham Building Department, Wenham Planning Department, Hamilton Planning Department, and the Hamilton Building Department. So that 18K is the built-in number for year one for all 4 areas. But due to the way the IMA billing is, and our land use department is just 2 part-time folks, it made sense to just pull it all into one, because it's a little bit cleaner for the billing later to have it just in the one budget.
So did planning originally have some of that Acela?
At some point they did, but in the most recent presentation, they did not. So it was, I think, between your November hearing of the department budgets, and I know it was not in Margaret's budget when she presented last week, the week before. So that's been pulled from our land use budget. But that 18,000 does reflect all 4 departments having full use. And it does include CONCOM as well for Wenham, and the capacity for CONCOM in Hamilton.
Who has the GIS? Margaret has GIS in there, right? Yeah. Okay, but that's smaller. It's like 5-ish or something like that. Does that sound right?
Is it 2,500 or is it 500?
It's a lot smaller than 18.
Yes. Yeah, it's a lot smaller than 18.
I get that 15 was just a plug, and it was early,
yeah.
Shared services, and a lot of work went into building it. So, I guess.
And Alex, I'll say to your point that I think you're about to make, when I first came up with this, and I said this to Peter and Patty in my initial budget meeting with them, is that I zero-based budgeted this budget when I saw the number, because I said that seems not correct to me. But there were figures like the mileage that Hamilton had budgeted for that we hadn't budgeted for, and I think there were things, unfortunately, that were not in that original 15K plug. I believe, Peter, if I am remembering correctly, we actually got that number from Mark Fine at MAPC. It wasn't something that we had generated. So going back in time, we were really focused on the salary and wages being where they ought to be. And we didn't spend as much time like living out the IMA. I said maybe we could have. But I think in order to do what we would have done at any point in time when one of us changed inspectors, or, the code books would have been coming, I think that it's hard, because I think if we had played it out, all of these expenses would have been there in FY19. I think we're paying for a lot of them in FY19, so I think it's hard to reflect on that budgeted 15K for that reason.
So, yeah, and I think, if I remember correctly, some of that increase from 15 to 28 is because you're including money that is in the FY19 Hamilton permitting budget in Wenham's budget, right?
Correct.
In Wenham's FY20 budget.
And to that point too, in the FY19 land use budget in Wenham, that's now in this budget for FY20 as well, for the Acela platform.
Jackie, the vehicle that you said was a used vehicle.
Correct.
What year is that?
2012, I believe. 2013. 2012. It's a 2012. But we are.
2002.
We are actively actually working with our energy manager, Vicky Missoni, myself, and Bill Tyak, who's our Wenham DPW director. We're applying for an e-vehicle. The car, when we adopted it, was in very good condition. They really cleaned it for us, which was very nice. And according to Bill Tyak and our preventative maintenance mechanic that works out of the DPW garage, it's in very good shape. But it's actually not a good vehicle in terms of our green communities reporting, because it's, and this is where I'm going to sound very stupid, it's a 6-cylinder. If there's something wrong with it that makes it deduct points from our green communities tabulation, and something, yeah.
What kind of car is it?
It's a car, Alex. It's a sedan. I'm really sorry. It's a sedan.
The reason I'm asking the question is because it seems $500 seems light, particularly for a 7-year-old car.
Well, all of our preventative maintenance is in-house, so this is really just for the sticker, the oil change, and any parts that we might need. So I actually worked with the DPW director on this number a lot, and the car's in very good shape. It was just an admin vehicle, so it only has, I think, 75,000 miles on it right now.
I think it's a tour.
That's the
Yeah.
car that Brian drives?
Yeah, it's a car that Brian drives.
It's actually nice looking Ford.
Again, this is like not my,
Ford Tour.
Former police admin car.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so but
This
like
isn't-
the
Is it a hybrid?
midterm fix is to go to an electric vehicle. And
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
applying for grant funding and for a charging station, electric vehicle,
and there's a lot of grant money on the table right now
This year.
for this, so,
Other people use the charging station?
What's that?
yeah, it'll be a public
It
one
would be a public charging station.
at Town Hall.
That is
Go
part
ahead,
of, that's,
go ahead.
I think that's actually part of the grant application.
It's-
Yeah.
You have to make.
You get the whole kit and caboodle.
When does the vehicle come online? You're not talking about FY20, you're talking about.
No.
No, but what's good is that this car has a decent lifespan, so we're definitely gonna be able to make it to getting an electric vehicle with this vehicle as it is, because it's in very good shape for its age and its model.
And it's sufficiently green. The emissions are from a Taurus V6
Yeah.
are no worse than 99%.
Yeah, but there's a green community, there's a vehicle
Money on the
policy
table
under,
for an e-car.
no, under the Green Communities Grant Program.
Yeah.
There's 6 criteria that you're basically signing off on, one of which is a vehicle policy. And they have very strict emission EPV standards.
Yeah.
On what you need to do for purchasing new vehicles or transferring existing vehicles.
Yeah.
So
Across the board or specific to departments? Or
Well,
there's exemptions for public safety.
Exemptions for
And-
public safety and public works, because nobody's making public works trucks that are
Right,
green.
right.
And public safety got an exemption,
course.
so basically 90% of your fleet is exempted, but anytime you're gonna use an inspector's vehicle, something like that, you need to try,
Yeah.
once you become a green community, you have pledged to try to turn those over to e-vehicles or
But
hybrids, so.
This, when we started using this was a nice to have because it was available as a freebie hand.
Correct,
Right.
and it gave us enough of a transition to get the e-vehicle.
Right.
Which we wouldn't need to pursue necessarily, right? Because it was a nice to have for the inspector to have a town vehicle.
Well, I think it was something where it was definitely an incentive for the position, but it's also, we don't have to pay mileage, and it's something where the very, very few full-time building inspectors, commissioners that don't have a town vehicle for usage, and this car was just a carryover car to be able to get to the e-vehicle, because we knew at the time of the feasibility study that e-vehicles, there was a lot of grant money coming for them. So at that point, we'll just be using that e-vehicle, and then we can return the admin vehicle to you for whatever other use you might like.
That's not allowed under the
Yeah, no,
policy.
but whatever the town wants to do with it is that we won't need it anymore, because we won't be passing it on to another inspector. We'll be done with it. We'll have the electronic vehicle.
So how many years total, including the 3 that the police had it, and then future years, do you expect this admin vehicle to be used for?
Police had it for 6, just to be clear.
Oh, I thought they had it for 3.
Nope, it's 2012, they just gave it up in September.
Yeah.
Frontline cruisers are 3, or every year.
Frontline or 3 years,
years,
and
whatever.
administrative are 6.
I'll apologize, Gary, I don't know. I know from Bill Tyak that it is in good shape, that it goes and checks in with our mechanic on a regular basis. Like, he's got all of our vehicles on a schedule for check-ins. We're on a more limited schedule than a police cruiser would be, or a plow truck, especially this time of year. But I know from all of its check-ins, it's been good. The only thing was that we replaced 2 tires in the fall that just weren't ready for winter. They had really lost their treads. But from my conversations with Bill Tyak, we're in good shape with that vehicle. Though if you would like more detail, please let me go back to Bill Tyak for that answer.
Total number of years we'll get out of the car. So, but is the e-vehicle 2 years down the road, 3 years down the road?
I think it could very well be in FY21.
Can I buy this car? I'll buy it right now for me.
You have to get the Board of Selectmen to declare it surplus, and then you can buy it.
Green Communities has
I
this
told you
thing-
what year my car was.
Yeah, I mean, the cheapest electric car is what? Is it a Leaf? Is it a Volt? They don't even make the Volt anymore. One of them they don't make anymore, right?
Yeah.
There's a Chevy one that I know
Chevy
several
Volt's
municipalities
going
have.
So I'll say generally, with all of the
$30s.
grants and
Yeah.
incentives that the state's currently providing, it would be limited to no cost for the vehicle and the charging station. to go that route for
Not
municipalities.
really, because we're paying for it.
That's-
We're absolutely paying for it in our federal taxes, but
But that's, in all fairness, what you're doing is you're deciding to have another vehicle. You're deciding to have another vehicle, which it'll be in perpetuity.
correct.
So that's the problem, is that you may get it free this year, and 10 years from now, you're gonna be paying for another one.
Yep.
Very, very well said. And
Yep.
significant maintenance costs up along the way. When I know this was like a nice to have because it came in as a freebie.
Yeah.
And granted, it does make the position more attractive, to be able to hop in that thing and just kind of, be done and around town
Yeah.
rather than, you're in and out of job sites rather than your own car, the wear and tear. I can totally appreciate that.
Yeah.
But that's well suited for it, not a brand new
And-
e-vehicle for which there's zero real need, save for the green communities stuff along the way.
Yeah, I think it's something where when we learned that the opportunity was there, Bill Tyack did ask me to pursue it with the energy manager. Is something we had talked about with MAPC, and I think we're very mindful of that green communities money, with both towns and the schools, and it does add somewhat to our competitiveness to be transitioning away from that vehicle to an electronic vehicle. I also will say that from my understanding, again, had a lot of conversations with Bill Tyack about this because, as you can tell, this is not my area of expertise by any means. But from my understanding, the way that the hybrid works is that, Brian's really not putting on a lot of mileage on the current vehicle. And so basically a charge would last him 2 or 3 days.
Yeah,
So it's actually a really good circumstance to be using the e-vehicle because you're not going any long distances. I think it takes like 30 miles before the gas kicks in. So I think if there's an optimal time to be using an e-vehicle, for a municipality, this is really the opportunity. And I think, it's on the table, and I think it's definitely worthwhile to pursue it. Rather than, make the position less attractive, add to our budget on the other end by increasing the salary and the other types of mileage costs. I do think it's a big perk to the salary for the building inspector position. I think it was a big part of our advertising for the position, that it was a full-time role with a vehicle.
And to be clear, I'm not suggesting we do away with it at this stage.
Yeah.
I'm suggesting we keep that car going.
Oh yeah, for as long as possible, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think it's just a question of,
Clear.
You're breaking my heart. Not be really
Not if I
So we are increasing the maintenance budget, is that what you're saying?
Well, we'll see.
I have a couple
Within
of questions, if
Sure.
I may. For the permitting software, this $18,000,
Mhm.
is this for the purchase of the software, or is this an annual cost?
this is a subscription cost. So what we do, so this is a cloud-based software. So this is the cost per user. That each person is using the software. We own our data. We have completely designed the citizen access portal to suit our needs. We've set up all the applications. We're very close to being live and bringing Hamilton with us. Hamilton's never had an e-permitting software before. We have been using only a back-end database, so this is bringing all of us into that cloud software that'll be shared between both communities.
So the purchase is gonna happen in fiscal year 19, this is just, it's gonna be an annual cost.
Purchase, we
really.
got grant funding for through the Community Compact IT program. So and Wenham got that grant funding, we're covering
We went to special town meeting and we asked funding for permitting software.
that's to cover your FY19
Subscription.
subscription costs,
Mhm.
Okay.
not the purchase costs.
The implementation is all on our grant funds.
A follow-on to that, just because Andy Wood had actually contacted me
Sure.
earlier today, and just want to know where we stood with that.
Yeah, of course.
I've got him scrambling to get us a new a new email provider
Mhm.
before the end of March, so he wants to make sure he knows where this is in
Yeah,
his
of course.
priority list after that. So,
Well, so unfortunately, as I think with every municipal IT implementation, there were delays with staffing and all sorts of other delays with getting the data and the communication. But I think we're really close. Right now, we're in beta testing, so we'll have a fully active online citizens portal. So we're going through all of those applications as though we were citizens to make sure they're really easy to use and there's good ease of access there. Tomorrow, I'm meeting with our project manager to set up some training time. We'll be doing training with all the inspectors and the Hamilton staff and our staff, and I expect that training right now is going to be the last week of February, first week of March. And from there, we will transition into the go live environment, which is where we're testing, but we're not actually live to the public. And that lasts for about a week. So I'm thinking it's going to be the second or third week of March right now, with Hamilton having about 1 week lag time behind Wenham, just due to the way that our old data had to be integrated into the system from our old software. And whereas Hamilton is just bringing in their property data, it'll be a much quicker kind of snap of your fingers type of piece. And I have gotten to Andy all of the pieces of Hamilton data, so he is ready for that. And he did review the services agreement alongside our IT company to ensure that our services agreement has, that the Hamilton and Wenham systems both met everything that needed to be done for the IT end. So he was good on that end and is kind of, I know he's ready to jump.
The bit, but
yeah.
I'll basically tell him he can hold his breath until first week of March.
Yeah, I think at some point it would be great I wanted to ask him to come to one of the trainings as well, because I think it'd just be good for him to see some of it and see some of that back end, but that would be an hour or two of time, not a huge commitment.
Except that he's got to fly here from Arizona in order to.
Yeah, that's true. Well, no, it's actually one you can do.
Not a huge commitment.
It's actually one you can do from your desktop. You don't have to be in the room.
Okay, all right.
It's
So
not.
he can do it.
Yeah, no, I reckon, yeah. So that shouldn't be a problem.
What was the clothing allowance for 600?
I'm sorry?
Clothing allowance for 600?
Just for some outerwear. That had been something in historic Hamilton budgets. But it's something where just so that when inspectors are out in the field, they've got a hat or a jacket or a sweater or something that says Town of Wenham, Town of Hamilton, especially this time of year when they're going out in the late afternoons into the darkness. We want residents to be able to identify them.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Just one other question.
Sure.
For in-state travel mileage reimbursement, I'm assuming that doesn't include the building inspector since he's driving in town.
It does include his mileage if he goes to building inspector school at UMass. That's the one piece from the building inspector, is that he wouldn't take the town vehicle for the 3-day trip to UMass to building inspector school.
Okay, so you were not allowing him to take the town?
No, he does not go home with the town vehicle. It's actually,
Stays in the town
you can go see it right now. We'll do a live demonstration.
That just seemed a little high to me, to be honest with you, because we've been paying mileage in Hamilton for all
Sure.
inspectors, and we've never paid $3,000 So
I think you just have to multiply that by 2 because they're driving around our town and your town now.
Yeah.
And there is the couple trips out to UMass.
Yeah, and I will say that I did base the mileage off a heavier time of year. I had gotten the data from Mary Ellen, and to me it made more sense to cover a heavy time of year for forecasting purposes rather than, January, February, lighter inspection times. So I believe these were from summer numbers. So I believe that's going to be an up to number.
And I'm assuming that this program is going to be similar to all of our other joint programs, that you'll provide us with actuals on the first quarter of the following year, so we might have some type of
Yep.
reconciliation adjustment.
Of course, and that's something that I'm working with Patty on, getting her up to speed, because I actually did the initial billing for this program just because we were finance directorless at the time. So I've been working with her to correct those, the third quarter and soon to be fourth quarter billings. But we'll get you all those actuals as the IMA states when the time comes.
You have that other sheet?
I do, and I have some copies too if you don't have copies.
I don't.
Okay, so if you don't mind taking one and passing them down. So this is the meat of, I think, my budget for this year. This is the two-town split. So as IMA states, the two-town split is based on 50% population, 50% permit volume. So you'll note when this sheet comes around, it shows the Hamilton and Wenham population and permit volumes from calendar year 2018. So there's a lot of math on here, but you can basically see, kind of as we've done in the past for Pleasant Pond and the other joint programs, there are things that are coming from different line items. So they're all here for the FY 2020 budget request, salary and wages. not including admin expenses based on the detail sheet we just were looking at. Insurance costs, and that's assuming an 8% projected increase, and that's only the insurance costs for our building inspector, who's a full-time shared employee of the town of Wenham. And then gas, we have a shared gas line in Wenham, so this would be the inspectional services share of the gas based on actuals from earlier this year. So that gives us a total of, for 2020, of $159,117. And skipping to, I think, the next section, you can see the population breakdown, the permit breakdown, and then the totals for each community for FY20. And in bold, you can see the Hamilton assessment versus the Wenham assessment for FY20. And I did note there the FY 2019 budgeted assessments. So you can see there is a bit of an increase on the Hamilton side. Obviously, some of that is borne because of the increase in the expense line and the increase in the salary line, but some of that is borne due to the change in the permit volume. Hamilton had a really great year for building permits, and I do have a copy of Mary Ellen's annual town report if people wanted more detail on that. But Hamilton did have a quite exceptional year for permits. We expected more in Wenham, to be honest, from the subdivisions to come in, but the one on Main Street near the Wenham Lake didn't bring in as many building permits as possible. There was some delays with putting the utilities in, so they really haven't come to see us for very much. And the subdivision over at Dodges Row that we expected only began 3 of the new units. So unfortunately, Hamilton bore, I think, more of the permit volume burden this year. Whereas the population split stayed relatively consistent. And then you can see at the very bottom in italicized print the Wenham total for the shared program and admin, and the Hamilton total for the shared program and admin, and that's like an end-all be-all plug, including inspectors and admin and expenses. And I apologize that this is a lot on one sheet, but I felt like it was based on some of the questions I had gotten from these 2 boards last year, that you would want this full picture.
I have a question on the population.
Sure.
So if we go back to the veterans pool, he has different numbers for pounds net population for the same.
Is it usage?
He has Hamilton 7188. We have 7854.
But these are totals.
Well, I think he's referring to the 2018 population numbers, and I will say that I got these 2 numbers from both town clerks this January. So about a month ago, I got them from Andrea and Diane, respectively. So that's where mine came from.
So I'm looking at
as of December 31st, 2018, from both clerks.
Because the pool was actually as of June 1st.
2018.
But there's a 1,200 person difference.
Well,
70.
it says 700 person difference at least on the
No, if
Hamilton.
we look at the Wenham side, we have 4924.
Yeah.
I mean, I should keep my mouth shut because the difference on the Wenham is 3715. Right?
Yeah.
So,
We're definitely in the 5,000 range,
Yeah.
not 7,100, is that what you had said, right?
No, he said 7,100 for Hamilton on the
Yeah.
pool sheet.
Oh, right.
Pool sheet, which is
Okay,
low.
what was the
And it's
number?
79
I mean,
here.
That's low. What was
Based
the
on
Wenham?
assessment.
I'm not sure where Sean's are pulled from. I just went right to the clerks for mine. And I'm happy to double check them. I could have made a typo. But I did mine as of December 31st, 2018.
I think we'll collectively circle back and
Yeah.
make sure we have the right and consistent numbers.
But I will say, though, for Marissa and Patty and Joe and Peter in particular, the way that this spreadsheet is built in Excel, once you change the number in population, the percentage will change and the whole thing will just drop down and correct itself. So it's all the formulas are built in for you if those numbers are slightly off.
Well, the pool's an enterprise fund, so it's not gonna change
I don't,
I mean, it's a revolving fund, is a revolving fund, I mean, so it's not gonna change cost for us, but it
Trying to make sense of it.
could change
Yeah.
something here.
Yeah, Jim, I'm sorry. It's a really dense one.
I'm just trying to, the total projected expenditures are 159.
Yep,
And then at the bottom, I suspect I'm missing something here.
sure.
It looks like it's almost 245,000
So,
for the Wenham and Hamilton total, just at the very.
and that's, so if you look, so the Wenham assessment in bold, if you add those two FY20 numbers that are in bold, that equals the 159. And then just below that, you can see Wenham admin and Hamilton admin. So the numbers in italics in the bottom are the bottom line costs for each municipality.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
So Hamilton and what we each separately staff those offices outside of the shared budget.
Okay.
We said we want people there. We don't want the whole idea behind it was we didn't want to send Wenham residents to Hamilton or vice versa when they went to pull a permit or ask a question or something like that. We still wanted a public face in each town hall to handle those responsibilities.
Good. Thank you.
So share for,
Is that it?
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jackie.
thanks, Jackie.
Is that it for our shared budgets?
I think that it is. Unless you know of any other
I
departments.
have to run.
Nick
Oh.
has to run, and as soon as he does, we don't have a quorum, so.
Okay, I think
That's why
unless, yeah.
Okay, so then,
can strike yours.
may I have a motion to adjourn?
That's gonna let-
So moved.
Second?
All in favor? Aye.
Okay.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Nice working with you. Cycling environmental disaster on your hands. And the clean, the conventional energy that generates the electricity outside in the parking lot. With that said, yeah, I mean, it would be predominantly all electrical that is utilized in a short range, 10 miles each way, 60 miles in the day or something like that. And you're gonna be under that kind of 200-mile range.
and
Reliability issues and cold weather and all that stuff, but.
In terms of operating costs, it
Yeah.
seems like
Thank
it's
you,
about
everybody.
Thank you.
Good night. Thanks, Phil. Good night.
Nicely done.
I mean, yeah, but the 500 budget for maintenance on a traditional, conventional vehicle too is also, I mean, it's, maybe 100 for an oil change. And hopefully you don't need much more. You need tires, it's 600, and you go over a little, whatever. Brakes, tires, running into the ground, sort of your point earlier.
Yeah.
But to the extent that there's, a green community benefit, go for it.
It's less green community benefit and more adhering to their standards.
Well, yeah, I mean,
They
Yeah.
don't, the policy does not allow hand-me-downs of
Of
old
course,
cruisers.
of course. No, I know,
And
wouldn't
we obviously,
facilitate that.
being green community opens us up to a lot of other grant funding.
Right.
So that's the balance
Right.
for us in terms of how to look at it. So
Right.
we've asked for a special dispensation
Right.
on this particular issue. Thank you very much. Here we are. But generally speaking, it's pretty clear, thou shalt not hand down used police vehicles to other departments that are non-public safety related.
Which is, I mean, to the extent that this was glaringly obvious at the time of accepting the hand-me-down for the Green Communities Initiative, it would have been nice to think about, oh, and by the way, when this thing dies, we also have to, replace it with a considerably more expensive green vehicle, essentially an electric, which, I mean, the federal subsidies are gonna drive at some point, as they have
Yes,
with
they are.
Tesla and everything else. I mean, the tax dollars are flowing big, but at some point, the real cost is gonna be borne by the consumer, even if we have, big credits at this point. So, but I do agree. I mean, I think it makes sense to have the administrative vehicle, period, in-house that we do.
Yeah, I mean, just the mileage alone
Sure.
for that position.
Right, exactly.
Paying for itself.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
And I will say too, just to that discussion too, is that he is got like a blue municipal plate, and so if there's a day where he's done his inspections and knows of problem areas, something we haven't had before in either community is a building inspector driving around in a municipal vehicle with a blue plate, and there's definitely not a financial value added there, but there's a zoning value added, and I think both communities that we're catching things that we might not have caught before in terms of unpermitted work or zoning issues. and just having someone who's really present in the community driving around, I think is really a critical point, at least for the Wenham perspective. But I think
Was for Hamilton.
Yeah, you know, I haven't been in Hamilton environment other than this, right? But certainly from what I've heard, the level of professionalism, the level of service that we're getting as a community is, you know, far above and beyond what we were getting before, so.
That's great. Not surprised to hear it, yeah.
Happy about that.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I mean, the level of service that you've provided and that the whole department is kind of sought to maintain and offer to the town is, on this side, also really highly valued.
I think Brian's somebody that's received well in the community. He's got a good way of being a building inspector. I mean, there are a couple different ways to be a building inspector. I like his approach, so.
That's good. It's good to hear. Great. Anything else? No? Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'm sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
When do we meet again?
We meet Thursday with the Board of Selectmen to discuss the above.
I'm going to say
services. Yeah, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Thanks,
Thank
Joe.
you.
Thank you for the spreadsheet.
6:30.
That was helpful. Low, high, medium.
Is it
That was helpful, thank you.
Is it 6:30 here at,
6:30 here.
okay,
Think
thank you.
so. Patty's here. Peter, you're here?
Be here.
All right.
BOS will be here.
Then Valentine's Day is again for the second year in a row. What better way to spend it?
Somebody's,
All of our significant others wholeheartily agree.
yeah, yeah.
As to the taxpayers,
Yeah, mine does.
for which we are stewards of their hard-earned dollar.
Make a
The motion to adjourn?
Oh, yeah.
Great, thank you. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks very much.
Gotta get some rest, man.